My brothers and sisters, last week we heard of John the Baptist proclaiming of one that would be greater than he, who would come and baptize in the Spirit and in fire, as opposed to the water that he baptized in. As several chapters of the gospel have passed, we now discover that John the Baptist has been arrested and has been isolated from his ministry and doesn't really know what's going on. Yet he's hearing rumors about this Jesus, and he's beginning to wonder if this Jesus is the one for whom he was to prophesy for. And he has these questions. Are you the one, or should we look to another? He was in a place of darkness, trying to do good works, but must have had some doubt, some concerns. Are you the one, or should we look for another? I wonder if that's a kind of feeling that we feel deep inside. We all have a religious sentiment. We may have some significant tie, some significant relationship with the risen one, and we may try out of that relationship with the risen one to try to do good works to proclaim his presence in the world. Yet that darkness may still be overwhelming, and we might begin to ask ourselves, is Jesus the one? Or maybe we really should look for another. The answer that Jesus gives to the Baptist's disciples is, well, just look around you. Am I the one, or should you look for? Just look around you. See the transformation that has been taking place. That the blind is able to see, the lame are able to walk, the mute are able to proclaim. Just look at all of this transformation, where they're in places where there was this darkness, where there was like this no potential for new life, and yet new life came out, like in a resurrected way. And this promise is a fulfillment of a promise of God from even long ago, with the people sitting in darkness. And the promises that we hear in today's first reading of all kinds of blossoms and all kinds of life taking place in a desert. A transformation in a place where it looks arid, a transformation in a place where there appears that no life could possibly take place. A transformation with life blossoming and blooming. The hints of the fruitfulness of God's life in us. In our own darkness, where we experience difficulties in our own families, difficulties in our society, and even difficulties and challenges within our church, we may begin to wonder, is Jesus the one who can really save us? Or should we look for another? Well, the only way I could answer that question in any meaningful way is the way Jesus answered the question for John the Baptist. And that's to express some signs of transformation. Not too far north from here, in Concord, New Hampshire, there is this parish known as Christ the King. We're Prince of Peace, they're Christ the King. And in 2011, they had to undergo a merge of 3 parishes. They probably were aware of the same changes in the world that caused the need to merge here in our archdiocese. They were probably aware of the lower attendance of Catholics in masses. They were probably aware of the declining number of priests. They were probably well aware of these situations, and yet when it came time to merge, they found it very difficult. It was very dark. They had to decide on which two of the three churches were to close and which of the churches would remain open and kind of rebuilt with elements of the other churches to express the reality of a new people. It is not something easy to do, I assure you. Yet they did. They decided that what they would do is not only do some kind of physical renovation, but also some kind of spiritual or divine renovation as well, both at the same time. They decided upon which two churches to close, which church would be refitted to allow for a new reality of people. But in the time when this church needed to be refitted, they decided they couldn't say Mass there. So what they did was they decided on getting this big old tent and celebrating Mass outside on the premises. Well, having during this time of deciding and closing, they were also going through Alpha, and in 2016 they joined this movement called Divine Renovation. And they saw the need from the beginning engagement with this, the need for a radical hospitality. And so a couple of couples came forth to take care of this. And in the 9 months while the tent was up and while they were celebrating Mass, they took hospitality to a great level. They started realizing that they needed to make personal sacrifices for one another. They needed to kind of move when they needed to move. They were able to have some water and cold towels for people during the hot summer months. They got a golf cart that drove people who couldn't walk well over into the tent and brought them to their chairs. And as things began to develop, they began to do little things after Mass as well. They got, like, on the Independence Day, they would get like Wiener wraps and have them with little American flags stuck in them after Mass. And then they got things like cupcakes and popcorn, special things, something every week. And this was done in the tent. And then it came time to move back into this new refitted building. And they brought this hospitality into the building, where they discovered they had become a people that lived for each other. And they were happy to know the names of each other. They were even welcoming to those who were strangers, those who were visiting. This transformation, they were also able to offer wheelchairs and assist people walking. And people were actually willing to kind of like move into the pew if somebody else needed to sit down. This was a radical hospitality that opens up all people who come to receiving the Word of God. They learned this. They started putting this into practice. And a lot of this came to a head when one Holy Thursday evening, a woman in her 30s who had difficulties with addictions and mental illness appeared at this Mass. And she had, in the middle of this Mass, some kind of meltdown. And the normal reaction is when we see something like this, I mean, just imagine just even somebody having a coughing fit in the middle of Mass. But this was even more than that we tend to freeze. And we don't know what to do. Or we know what to do, but we just can't do it. And yet, when this woman was having her meltdown, the parish gathered around her. They knew exactly what to do because of their radical hospitality. They comforted her. They brought her to the bathroom when she needed to go. And by the end of Mass, she was resting on the lap of a parishioner who was stroking her hair. And by the end of this Mass, it was decided that she would go home with one of the parishioners. And over the course of the next couple of weeks, they discovered that what she truly wanted was to be baptized. And so they worked it out. They gave her some catechesis, and a group of parishioners celebrated her baptism, her confirmation, and her first Holy Communion. She disappeared because those struggles and those problems remained with her, but she did reappear relatively recently with a grateful spirit, still struggling in the darkness, but remembering the light and the love that these parishioners offered to her. And there were many other stories in which the pastor had been deeply moved, of people telling him how welcoming their parish was, and how they, more importantly, came to know the love of God through their simple actions for them. Here, this parish started off in darkness, forced to, in a sense, be nice to one another, forced to make difficult decisions that no parish would ever want to make, living in such darkness. But they were open to the grace of Jesus Christ and the power of the Eucharist, and this grace filled in them and transformed their parish. They're by no means a finished work, but their transformation continues. My brothers and sisters, we share, I would say, a similar kind of darkness, a similar kind of struggle in our own merging, in our own darkness. And yet, if I were to look out into the desert, I would be able to see some blossoms, some life coming forward, particularly in our prayer festivals, where people of one generation are coming together with people of another generation and sharing their faith together, learning new things or being reminded of old things, and praying together. My brothers and sisters, is Jesus the one who can save our parish? Or should we look for another? I think the emerging fruits speak for themselves.